Hey everyone, welcome back to Engelbard. Usually, with a few exceptions, I cover games and systems that are decades old, or new ways to play games and systems that are decades old. But today, I'm going to do the complete opposite. I'm going to cover something so new that it's not even coming out until next year. I speak of the Intellivision Amico. What the f*** is that? The Amico is a brand new game system from a newly reinvigorated Intellivision headed up by games composer and former Electric Playground host Tommy Tallarico. It wants to bring games back to a simpler time, when they were small and easy to pick up and play, and many offered multiplayer on one screen. But before I delve too much into the Amico, let's just take a little smidgen of time to talk about its roots. The original Intellivision came out in 1979. It was primitive and overall pretty comparable to an Atari 2600. Some of its games look and sound a tad better, but not too much. It used this funky disc controller with a number pad and two action buttons on either side. It was connected to the console by some wiry type of thing. What's that thing called again? Oh yeah, a wire. It had some classic arcade ports and some original games that are now regarded as classics, at least by Intellivision fans. This is the Intellivision 2. It's a bit of a misnomer, as this was the same hardware in a more compact, cheaper shell. It's really more like an Intellivision Lite. An Intellivision 3 with updated hardware was planned but never released. Another console was also in the works, known after the fact as the Intellivision 4 by fans, even though work started on it before the 3, and it would have had advanced features like hardware sprite scaling. But this was not to be either. Since the early 80s, the brand has been completely dormant. Until recently. This is Tommy Tallarico. Tommy Tallarico is famous for composing some amazing game soundtracks like Terminator CD, Aladdin for the Genesis, Skeleton Warriors, and many others. Let me just take a moment here to say, this guy's musical talent is awesome, which if you played any of those games or his others, you'll already know. Tommy also co-hosted the Electric Playground for G4 in the past, so you may have already seen him without even knowing it. In 2018, Tommy Tallarico announced that he had been named president of Intellivision and they would be launching a brand new game system, and that system would be named the Intellivision Amico. The Amico was originally planned to launch in October of 2020. I'm recording this on August 24th of 2020, and as of just a few weeks ago, there was an announcement that the system had been delayed until April of 2021. Now that your brain is bursting with knowledge about the Amico, let's take a look at the system itself and its controller. Here are the Amico's hardware specs. While a specific CPU isn't specified, we can see it's an 8-core chip, and I think it's safe to assume that it's an ARM-based SoC. The custom OS is a hybrid of Android and Linux, which is kind of strange considering Android itself is already built upon Linux. The Amico also has 2GB of RAM, 32GB of storage, and built-in Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and RFID technologies. The big draw hardware-wise here is the unique-looking controllers that come with the system, and it will include 2 controllers in the box. They call to mind the old Intellivision controllers, but they have a screen, 4 action buttons, a speaker, a mic, haptic feedback, a gyroscope, and an accelerometer. They also support wired USB-C or wireless charging. So what's this thing gonna cost? Well, I've got good news and I've got bad news. Let's start with the bad news. I'll tell you the price of the system if you promise to watch until the end of the video. Anyway, the system comes in a little bit more pricey than you might expect for something like this, at $250.
Sad.
I know, it is quite a bit, but I imagine most of the cost is wrapped up in the technology that's in the included controllers. And there are 2 controllers included with the system. The good news is that games are going to be cheap. They'll only cost between $3 and $10 each, and there's going to be 6 games included with the system when you purchase it. As for the audience the Amico is trying to reach, it's somewhat unique compared to most other consoles, but it does look like there's going to be some kind of overlap with Switch fans. With the types of games that you're going to see on the Amico, the quick pick-up and play games that are family-oriented and multiplayer on a single screen, a lot of that type of stuff is already available on the Switch. And if you think it sounds like mobile gaming, well, that's because it does. But there's one big exception. There's not going to be any DLC, no microtransactions, no pay-to-win, or any of that garbage. At least, that's the plan. And what about the games? Why don't we take a look at some that are in development right now? The Amico is going to have a mixture of updates to old Intellivision classics as well as brand new exclusive games. Here we'll see what kind of quality to expect out of the games for the system. Looking at these visuals, yeah, your jaw is going to remain firmly affixed to your face and will not drop to the ground. The visuals are pretty simple, especially when it comes to 3D games. Most of the 2D games we've seen so far kind of can't escape that Flash look and feel. Moon Patrol is probably the most visually complex game on the system, and it looks like someone basically up-resed a PS1 game in an emulator. Some of the 2D games like Astro Smash and Evil Knievel sort of have that Flash look that I mentioned just a moment ago. Now there are a few games that are going to use the controller in pretty interesting ways, such as Monster Spades. I imagine there will be quite a few games that use the controller similarly. It also looks like several games make interesting use of the disc controllers, particularly games that rely on rotation as a major element of character movement. It's also worth noting that all games will be rated either E or E10, so there will be no bad f***ing language, excessive violence, or gore in any of them. Here's a few more peeks to round things out. So what's my opinion on the Intellivision Amico so far? Frankly, I'm not willing to even prejudge a system more than 8 months before it comes out. What I will say is from what's been shown of both the system and the games, I see both potential and concerns. Let's talk about my concerns first. Number 1, the price. Coming in at $250, the Amico is going to be $50 less than the standard Switch and $50 more than a Switch Lite. That's a hard sell at that price to me. And who knows, Nintendo might even drop the price of the Switch or the Switch Lite by the time the Amico actually comes out. Number 2, the controller. The controller just doesn't look like it's comfortable or very intuitive to use. And I've got to be honest, I wasn't very much of a fan of the disc-based controller of the original Intellivision. Having said that, I'm willing to be convinced. I'll just add that, with the exception of the Wii, really, every time someone's tried to innovate with a whole new, different type of controller, it just hasn't worked. Number 3, RAM and storage. For a system coming out in 2021, 2 gigabytes of RAM is paltry. Likewise, 32 gigabytes of storage space is just tiny for a system in 2021, especially considering the cost of the Amico. I will note on the plus side that you can add a micro SD card to expand its storage capability. 4. The games. All the games are still currently at various levels of development, and obviously I haven't played any Amico games yet. But from what I've seen so far, I'm concerned about the games, and there are none that just grab me as something that I absolutely have to try. So now that we've got the concerns out of the way, let's take a look at the things that I see as potential positives. 1. Small, cheap games. While I love a lot of modern games, one thing I can say about them is that many of them are just too big and bloated for their own good. I'm sick of sitting through needlessly long cutscenes and waiting for endless downloads. None of that should be a problem on the Amico. 2. The concept. I love the concept. Small games that are easy to pick up and play, more family-oriented games, lots of local multiplayer, no microtransactions. Everything I see here is a positive. 3. Catalog of games. While Intellivision may not have been a huge force back in the day, there are a lot of games for the system that are considered classics by its fans. Some of these games are getting brand new updates for when the Amico launches, and Intellivision has stated that some of the original unaltered classics may launch in the year 2022. 4. Physical media. Intellivision has also announced that Amico games will be available on some type of physical game card, so that's a huge plus for collectors. 5. Availability. The Amico is going to be available at large stores like Walmart and Best Buy, and also GameStop, assuming they still exist in April of 2021. Having said all that, while I won't judge the Intellivision Amico until it comes out, as I mentioned before, I do remain a bit of a skeptic. You see, the video game market is notoriously tough to break into, and while Intellivision is a recognizable and old storied brand, this incarnation of it is essentially new. Now don't mistake my skepticism for negativity. Tommy Tallarico seems like a great guy, and he's been in the industry for decades, and I would love to see both him and the Intellivision Amico be a success. Whether or not that happens remains to be seen. And now another video draws to a close, my retro gaming and future gaming friends. So, did you already know about the Intellivision Amico? Is this the first you're hearing about it? Does it look like something that's interesting to you? Drop a comment and share your opinions. With that, I'll say thanks for watching, and see me later.